So namaste and welcome to Satsang today. In my own awakening journey, and in a lot of beings that I see struggling, there is one common factor that really makes a difference, and that's really what I wanted to talk about. If we really get this kind of straight in our approach to our awakening. Awakening is first and foremost to see what we really are, and then to begin to live as that, although they're really happening at the same time. We can't really see what is true about ourselves without it showing, revealing to us some aspect of something that is not true about us. And one of the things that really helped me to speed up my awakening was really my attitude, how I was coming to satsang, how I was coming to my awakening, how I was coming to these patterns when they came up to seemingly disturb my peace. So it's worthwhile spending some time really just talking about that and seeing if we can make it clearer, if we can make it more effortless, make it more smooth, to have these things, firstly to be deepening our seeing of what we are in reality, and then for that to impact and help it become easier to let go of what we are not. Because one thing I see over and over again, and it was the same for me, is that we all want to see what we are in awakening, and that seems totally logical. That's what we're here for. But probably just as important, and sometimes maybe more important, is to be willing to see what we're not. Now that sounds like a very simple thing, just to go, well, that's some old story, it's not true about me. And we see that perhaps the first time we see some old pattern comes up, we've had a seeing before or some epiphany, and suddenly this isn't true for us. Something has shifted inside, but we can't quite believe that this thing is as true for us anymore, or at least as much as you can't give it 100% belief that I'm not good enough to wake up, for example. But then what most of us do, and I did, is to begin to push that away. We begin to push away what we have seen to be untrue in this kind of sorting mechanism. This is what I am over here, and this is what I am not over here. And I want to get rid of this stuff, and I want to have more of this. And it seems like the logical thing to do, to run towards what we are and to try to move away from what we are not. So what we are not, we can come to see is all our beliefs that we had about ourselves, about other beings, about the world in general, about our awakening, about our own being in itself. All of that is based on this idea, all these beliefs that I am this separate being here. And the one thing we tend to always do is push that away once we've seen it's not true. But if we look at why it feels so good to see what we really are, it's because we're not trying to run away from that. We want to see that. We want to come to recognize even clearer what the essence of everything is, this empty empty of substance, awake, aware presence that we are. But if we really examine that presence, that which is silently in the background of every experience that we have, and we really sort of look at its qualities, if we will. It doesn't really have any qualities, but for want of a better way to illustrate what I'm trying to explain, I'll use that word. What is it doing that we are not when we're suffering? What's the difference between this awake, aware presence that we seem to not line up with when we're suffering? And it's really that it's never, ever pushing anything away, ever. If we call it presence for the sake of this, it's just present. It's not in relationship with anything. It's not pushing against here, and it's not trying to grab. It doesn't do that. That is an old mechanism that the egoic sense of self has. It sees two things, ego. It sees what I am and what I'm not, and it pushes against this, and it tries to get more of this. It may be a simple shift in attitude to be more like, to allow ourselves to function more like this awake, aware presence, this pure sentience that we really are, can really speed our transition through working through these energies that come up once we've started to see what we are, even before we've started to see what we are. So can we begin to almost turn this around? Can we begin to really want to see what we are not? What if it's not enough to just recognize once it's not true? What if we have to look at this again, really want to see a few times at least that it's not true? And to do that involves a willingness to really want to see, to be like this awake, aware presence, or whatever we're calling it. If we're going to call it silence, silence inherently, by its nature, is listening. It's open and it listens to everything. Whether our mind would label it as a positive thought or a negative thought, a pleasant state or an unpleasant state, silence is listening to everything equally. If we call it stillness, the very inherent nature of that stillness is kind of an open receptivity to anything that appears in it. It's open to everything equally. Silence is listening to everything equally. Awareness is aware of any phenomena equally. It's not having this push-pull thing going on. There's nothing wrong with push-pull until it no longer suits you anymore. To some extent, we have to really want to see what's not true. It may seem counterintuitive to mind. Mind says that's not true, let me dismiss it now. But if we want to live and embody and be this awake, aware presence, can we embody this in these moments more? Can we embrace these energies when they come up, these old patterns? You know, our doubts, our fears, our self worth issues, our self-esteem, our reasons why we're not going to make it to awakening, our reasons why we're not worthy of it, reasons why we don't deserve success and happiness and peace. All of these things that are going to come up as we're seeing what we are, we're going to keep seeing, being presented with all these things that are no longer true for us. And if we push that away, as is our first knee-jerk response as human beings, then we're missing an opportunity to really want to see. The more I want to see what's not true for me, the more I'm really open to I'm developing this attitude of open curiosity to see why this is not true and to experience that it's not true also. I won't be able to be pushing against it at the same time. And in that, we kind of begin to feel better. We are never feeling bad ever because of some emotion or some negative state that arises. What makes it negative is that we're pushing against it. It's an utterly, utterly simple thing. And yet we all are doing the opposite as seekers, as human beings. As human beings, we're hardwired to run towards what feels good and to run away from what feels bad. But what if it only feels bad because we're pushing it away? Could it be that we can be more like this awake, aware presence that is equally open to see anything and everything? Could it be that in the being open to see what we really are not, that our awakening can fully blossom much quicker? And as I'm saying this, I'm aware that nobody is ever going to like feeling these negative emotions, but we can want to see them even if they don't feel so good. And if we are not doing this push-pull thing with them when they arise, or if we kind of override that immediate knee-jerk pushing away and open up again to want to see it, then there will be peace as well as this negative emotion or these thoughts or this pattern that's playing. So we have to really, really want to see with an open curiosity what we are. And that never goes away. There's always going to be an open curiosity to see deeper on this side of the coin that is awakening. And we can never get to the end of that, and why would we want to? And it's so glorious to see ever deeper, ever clearer. For the rest of forever, we can be having ever greater revelation of what we really are. And on the other hand of this, the other side of this coin, there has to be this ever greater wanting to see what you are not, and allowing that to really, if I have this feeling arise that I'm not good enough, I'm never gonna figure out this awakening stuff, it's never gonna work for me. How am I ever going to really come to see why that's not true? And experience, more importantly, the place where it isn't true. Where awakening is already happening, it just is. If I'm pushing it away, does it make any sense that I can really come to understand and transcend this thing and dissolve this thing if I'm in opposition to it, if I don't want to even look at it? It's like trying to understand somebody's point of view, trying to have a conversation with them when you've shut them in the other room and you've locked the door and you've come back over here. How are we ever going to engage with this emotion or this pattern and transcend it once and for all if we are basically saying you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't exist, you should leave, you should go out of my awareness? So if you can see the areas in your own life where there is this tendency to not want to engage with something, in a very simple shift of attitude, only by understanding and really wanting to really see why this is not true, it's going to allow it to be transmuted in the light of your awareness. Each one of these things that arises is only wanting to come back into the wholeness, to come back. And it's not that by accepting it, we're going to be feeling shame or guilt or anger or whatever it is. By accepting it and transmuting it, it's going to be turned back into peace, into love, into joy. Each emotion, each state, each pattern has reduced in frequency. The vibration of it has been slowed right down because we're pushing against it, and it will naturally come back into its natural state as we naturally come back into our natural state, which is wanting to see, wanting to look at. Awareness by its very nature is aware, and if we are trying to not be aware of something, that's about as opposite as we can get to our real nature. That's about as self-negating as we can be. That's about as resistant to peace, love, and joy that we can be just by not wanting to see. And it's all based on this one idea that by not wanting to see, by not looking, I'm going to feel better. And if we just stop for a moment and examine if that mechanism is actually working, is that really working? That by not seeing this stuff, by pushing it away, I'm feeling better? Or is it in fact the opposite that's happening? Could it be that when I see what I really am, I feel good because I'm open to see? And when I see what I am not, I feel bad because I'm not open to see? Could it be that simple? Is it really working to push this stuff away? Has it brought peace? Is it healing? Is it transmuting? Or is it going away, sinking back under the radar just to re-emerge in a couple more days or weeks or months with the same question that it's bringing? Will you look at me? Will you look at me? Will you see me? Will you understand me? Will you love me? Will you embrace me as much as you can in this moment, however much that is? What if that was the one thing that is necessary for it to be transmuted? How do we then change our attitude? How do we develop this willingness to look? Well, it becomes hand in hand with seeing what we are. The more that we see what we are really, and not this separate being with all the stories that go with this separate being, as we see more and more what is true, it should be easier and easier to see what isn't true, because it really isn't true. Every time I look at this feeling of unworthiness or doubt in my own ability to wake up fully, I can't believe it quite as much as I did before, and I can embrace it a little bit more or a lot more. Anything that we've ever really fully let go of in our awakening has been because it's just been so clearly revealed that it was not true, that we stopped pushing against it completely. Anything that's ever gone and left us has been because it had no meaning for us anymore. It wasn't being pushed away or rejected within our being. So there's a kind of shift in attitude that begins to happen as we really begin to mature into this process where we it's not enough for us anymore to see it. We want to be this. We want to live as this. We want to allow it to pervade our entire existence, our relationships, our family, our pathway, our fellow Sangha members, our relationships with them, our finances, our career, our dreams, our goals. As we really want to be this, it has to be a seeing, doesn't it? It has to be a lining up with our essential nature. Our essential nature is that which is awake and watching dispassionately, meaning it's not that it doesn't care dispassionately, but it's not watching as a separate being. It's watching everything equally. It's watching everything in this calm equality of being. So just to get this shift of attitude in place, when this occurs, quite naturally awakening will begin to speed up. It'll begin to happen much more effortlessly. It'll begin to be embodied much clearer. Just by shifting our attitude, how are we coming to these things that arise? How are we handling them? How are we holding them? Some part of our being, our egoic sense of self, this sorting mechanism, wants to get to the end. It wants to say, this is what I am, this is what I aren't. And when I've got to the end of this sorting process, I'll be happy. When I've clearly seen what I'm not and I've clearly seen what I am, there'll be a finish line there where I can stop this sorting process and I'm free. I won't be suffering anymore. But maybe the suffering is for a different reason. Maybe the suffering is because I'm dividing myself into things I want to see and things I don't want to see, things I really don't want to look at. Maybe inherent in that is duality, two-ness. And there's nothing wrong with duality. It works for a lot of beings, but if you're in a satsang like this, it's no longer adequate for you. It's no longer enough. You don't want to feel divided anymore. That is the root of suffering. Things I don't want to see and things I do want to see. Reality, illusion. If you truly know that something isn't true for you, it can't hurt you to look at it. It's not going to hurt you to embrace it. And if you embrace it, it'll be clear that it's not true for you. And if it's not true for you, it'll be easier to embrace it. And if you embrace it, it'll be clear that it's not true for you. And so on. Sometimes what we hear in a spiritual teaching seems overly simplistic. Sometimes our mind will say, yes, but, this one that comes up, I can't just look at it. It's so convoluted. There's so many things tied up in this one pattern. I wouldn't even know where to start with this. The only thing we can ever be responsible for, ever, is whether we want to see or not. Everything else is going to resolve itself. If there's this big thing coming up for you, have you really just sat with it and I really just want to know what this is? What is this about actually, really? Maybe that's your only work in looking at it, just to want to see what it really is. If you're trying to get to the end of seeing all the stuff that's not true, is that really working anyway? Is this sorting process that we're doing, is it really working? Is it really allowing you to come to an end of suffering? So I'd just like to encourage you to see if you can deepen this attitude, however much it's been developed. Could it be that this is the only thing really to perfect, wanting to see? Isn't that the basis of meditation, wanting to see what I really am? And the basis of contemplation is wanting to see what I'm really not, actually. And self-inquiry, wanting to see what I am. And aren't they really two the same thing? Is it possible to see deeper what I am without some clear understanding of what I'm not? And is it possible to see what I am not, what's not true for me? It's not true that I was never good enough without seeing I've always been worthy. It's never really been in question. Can we really even separate these two ultimately? So if you're feeling a little bit more inspired and empowered after hearing this, then you've really grasped it. You've really, the simpleness, the attitude with which you come to awakening is everything, absolutely everything. If you get this right, this attitude right, and that's not a finish line either, that's a work in progress. And that's pretty much 100% of the work done. Everything else will be revealed to you effortlessly in your wanting to see, because you are reality. You want to see, everything has to shift so that you can see everything. And the suffering can stop right now if we want to see more than we don't want to, if we're trying to open up and see and understand more than we are pushing away. Again, just want to ask you to really examine if pushing away and resisting is really working anyway. Or is it one of these great myths of the mind that we all just believe that if I resist something, it's going to go away and it won't come back and it actually won't hurt. This is the way to stop suffering, is by pushing against, resisting. When I really look back at my entire awakening, I found that that had never actually worked, not even once. Not even once. It just had never actually worked to resist something. And then when I began to really want to see everything that came up, that actually worked every time. Every single time I wanted to really understand something, I couldn't suffer from it. As always in our awakening, it's the simplest things done consistently that are the most powerful in terms of actually living in peace. It's just a moment by moment then attitude, just a moment by moment opening, curiosity, willingness. These are all things that we can cultivate right now, that we may not have so much of at the moment, but we can. It is always inside us. We can allow it to come to the surface. Okay. So I will, if anybody wants to ask a question about that or to share something, I have a question emailed already, and I'll take a couple more after that as well. If you're not familiar with Zoom, just in case you're not familiar, if you go to the participants section and click on that and you scroll down, there's an option to raise your hand there to ask a question if you want to. So I will start with this emailed question first. There we go. So the question says, excuse me, Namaste, Helen. Many thanks for your time and wisdom. It's much appreciated. It's very much appreciated. My question pertains to thoughts. Are our thoughts our own? Where do they come from? Whether we become attached to them or whether we observe them with equanimity, as in meditation and practice, are our thoughts given to us? As such, are the thoughts we have unique to us, specific to each, so that we may dissolve our ego or transcend our conditioned behavior? Many thanks. So, are our thoughts our own, and where do they come from? But it's a really good place to kind of stop there. Are our thoughts our own? Where do they come from? Let's ask this question right now inside. Where do our thoughts come from? This is a really good investigation. Where do they come from? Are they our own? If we ask that question inside, where do they come from? When a thought suddenly appears in my awareness, where did it come from? If you ask that question with a curiosity, there is suddenly this quietness, this quiet space will present itself. If we can go through, perhaps our mind says, well, they come from the mind, thoughts come from the mind. But if we stay with that question, where do they actually come from? There's suddenly a kind of quietness in that, isn't there? They're coming from this quiet listening that is going on, this awake awareness that's just kind of nothing yet in actuality, but everything in potential. And one of the ways it becomes an actuality is as thoughts. It appears as thoughts. And is this our thoughts our own? Well, is this quiet place inside where thoughts arise from, is that a personal me? Or is it something completely different? Even if we just touch upon this quiet something that I can't really describe, that's kind of thoughts are emanating out of, can I say that it's a me, that it's a separate being? Can I really describe it like that? And if there isn't really a separate being, are my thoughts my own? Are they just mine? Or does it become something different? Are thoughts kind of just more like thoughts? They don't really actually belong to anyone. And even if you look at the content, if you asked, if you stopped someone on the street and asked them to describe the content of their mind throughout the day as it's thinking, do you think that it would be much different to your own? Maybe it would be similar in the actual content, but maybe the thoughts would all be about the same type of thing, trying to rehash what's happened in the past to make it feel different inside myself, and to anticipate the future, make myself feel better about that in the future. And maybe some self-rejecting thoughts going on inside, doubting, unworthiness. So what the thoughts are talking about in the outer world might be different, but the energy of them, the frequency of them might be very, very similar. If we took 10 people at random and asked them to describe what they think about most times during the day. So they're not really our own, really, in terms of a separate being. Could it be that thoughts are arising out of a certain frequency, such as an energy field, such as unworthiness and such as anger? Or could it be those kind of energies that where thoughts arise from, and they're not as personal as we think? They're more symptoms of holding a particular energy field inside a certain frequency. So whether we become attached to them, which is whether I believe them, or whether we observe them with equanimity as in meditation, are our thoughts given to us? So if they were given to us, that must signify that there's some external thing that could give them to us. Again, let's just check out that question, where do thoughts actually come from? When we ask that question, there's an immediacy of this space inside where they come out of, a mystery where they arise out of this unknowingness that is me, something I can't know in a traditional way. And as you begin to ask this question and stay with it, you begin to realize that it's arising out of me, some deeper place that isn't a separate being, but it very much is me. It is what I am. It's the core of my being. And as such, are the thoughts we have unique to us, specific to each, so that we may dissolve our ego or transcend our conditioned behavior? Well, yes and no. Each thought we have is going to produce, that it's not the thoughts themselves, it's whether we are able to sit back and watch them, as you've said in this message, or whether we're believing them, whether we're attached to them. That's what's tailor-made for our awakening. That's what's helping us transcend, to begin to notice where I'm grabbing hold of these thoughts and automatically assuming that they're true. So much so that I may have done it my entire lifetime and never realized I was believing these thoughts until I began to see that they might not be true. So yes and no, they're kind of tailored for us because they are symptoms, our thoughts, of our energy field. So if I've come into this bodily existence with fear of not being safe, fear of not being loved, then my thoughts are becoming from a fearful place most of the time around these particular areas. In that way, they are personal to us, unique to help us develop. But in another way, it's kind of impersonal too, isn't it? Everyone has thoughts. Everyone believes some thoughts. And everyone struggles eventually to move beyond those thoughts. So kind of the energy field is the thing that is really where the thoughts are arising from. And that energy field arises from this quiet place inside. And the more you get in touch with this quiet place inside, the harder you'll find it is to reject anything, as we were saying before, or to be in opposition with these thoughts, or to believe them. The more aligned we are with what is true, that which just always wants to see actually, the harder it will be for us to believe a thought or try to reject something. So I'd suggest that first question you've asked, second question, where do they come from? That's the answer to all of these other questions. So, very good. Just going to have to pause this for one moment. Excuse me, I'll be back in one moment. Sorry about that. Lovely. So, Ron, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Helen.
Morning, how are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. I've got two questions, if I might.
Yeah.
One that's directly on point, and one what you talked about this morning, and one that's slightly different. So I'm trying to what I'm looking for, not equalize, trying to fit the neti process in with what you talked about this morning. And I think what I heard you say, and my understanding of just traditional neti, and I think kind of what my experience has been is that, you find out what you're not, and when you see what you're not, whatever is left is what you are. Um, but I think what I heard you say is not that there's anything unhealthy or wrong about that. Maybe the key is not rejecting the intellectual understanding of what you're not, but allowing the experience of what you're not to be the don't want to use the word rejection, but kind of shifting away to naturally and effortlessly shift away from it because of the experiencing of what you're not.
Yeah, if you experience, for example, unworthiness, some unworthiness comes up, naturally you're not gonna want to experience that again because it doesn't feel pleasant. That experience of that in itself is enough to want to transcend it, isn't it? But then about how we go about wanting to transcend that is by usually pushing it away. Next time it arises, I don't want to feel that again. But to really want to understand it, to want to understand why it's not true, is going to lead to that experiential place inside where it's obviously not true, where I feel whole, where I feel complete, where I kind of intuitively know that I am good enough, that that's never been an issue actually, that kind of seeing. So as I experience what I'm not, it's going to raise this desire for me to want to see clearer what I am. And that is what I am is the seeing itself. So if I'm immediately going into them pushing something away, it's going to be counterproductive, isn't it? It's every time I experience something that I don't like, I can see clearer. It doesn't feel true for me anymore. I don't believe it as much, but I also don't have to push it away. The way that the real self is with anything is it doesn't believe it, but it also doesn't push it away. That's kind of the only thing it can do is just be with something. It doesn't identify with it because it can't. And it also doesn't resist anything. It's not capable of resisting. It's kind of that middle ground with that.
Thank you. The second question relates to awareness seemingly appearing as different beings, and can you, at least from your perspective, maybe shed a little more light on your sense of why we then commonly all see the same objects, the same trees, the same cars, the same people in the room. I've heard this term that there's kind of this collective agreement of the one mind, that these, vibration, because all these objects are vibrational patterns, that we see all these different vibrational patterns exactly, the same way. We know that until there's an observer that notices that the energy patterns don't even appear as objects, because that's when they move from wave to particles. So just trying to get a little more clarity on that, why we see these potential projections the same way, seeming.
We do and we don't see them the same way, right? If you and I sat together and looked at a book together, let's take something simple. Even the color of the book cover, we might think that we're seeing the same thing. But, if you ask 10 people what the color of this book cover was, they might give you 10 different opinions. So even something as simple as the actual object itself that we're looking at, we might be perceiving it differently even through our senses. It's I had quite a startling thing with my daughter the other day where she was insisting that this thing was orange and I was sure that it was red. And before we would have gone into this disagreement, but it was just astonishing that we were both seeing the same thing from a completely different place. And perhaps if we asked, if we got another 10 beings and said, describe this thing for me, they might have said something even more different. And we all have this assumption that we're seeing the same thing. And sometimes it's, we're actually seeing the same object the same way. And sometimes it's clear. We did an experiment once where we transcribed a passage of a recording that me and this other being that we were listening to, sitting next to each other, doing it at the same time, listening to the same audio. And when we looked at what we'd written down, there was actually quite different. The same words on the same audio at the same time, we'd written something different. And then even on a deeper level, our interpretations of the object, what we think and feel about it, our memories about it are going to be different. So it's the same one being appearing as all these human beings, technically seeing the same object, but it's happening in a very unique and individual way. Our own perspective, our own memories, our own experiences are going to color what we, pardon the pun, going to color what we see. Sometimes in a very literal way, you know, as to if I'm sure this thing is red, I guess what I'm going to see, you know. So it's one of those wonderful mysteries of how this one being that's everywhere all the time can have such different experiences as human beings. But really it's because of the thoughts that it's filtering its experience through. You know, if it's sure that it's separate and different, it's unique in each expression, but it's not separate. So it leads to kind of a different perspective.
Yeah, I can just kind of see those nuances because we have the seemingly these different filters. But let's take it down a little more basic. There's a tree right there. There isn't anyone that's not going to see a tree, or if they walk that direction and keep going, that's not going to physically hit that tree.
Yeah.
So again, we know that's an energy pattern. We know that there's a lot more space between the particles on you know, in a huge scale than there are there's actual matter there. So how is it that we kind of collectively have that experience, or is that just part of the mystery?
It's everybody, every human body is vibrating at a very similar rate to the tree. So every human body is going to have a very similar experience with the tree. The rate of vibration of the tree, the particles of the tree are vibrating. We'd call it solid, and so would we with the human body. So although there might be all these individual unique expressions of the one being appearing as human beings, we're all going to have that same experience if we walk towards the tree, as you said, because the rate of vibration, if our vibration was much higher than the tree, we would pass right through it, just like X-rays or infrared or anything like that. Or, you know, so that part of us all is the same. Each human body is vibrating differently, but minusculely differently, you know, compared to still very much in vibrational resonance with the tree. That's why we call it solid, because it's vibrating at a level that's very similar to my own body. That's why we call it tangible even.
Okay, okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Peeling it back one more layer. So I guess maybe the mystery is, who is the director the art director that set the stage for all these different vibrational patterns?
Never been able to find that one out. I find this paradoxically, here I am teaching satsang, but I find this great mystery that is me, that's kind of indescribable, and yet loves to play as a tree, as a human being, and all of that, right? That look at all these shapes I can make, and yet none of these shapes really limit me or describe me. It's kind of the one unanswerable question. You know,
what a creative genius you are.
I know, it just goes on forever, right? It's good fun. And then I created this human shape to kind of have this conversation with myself, right? It's quite funny. Lovely.
Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay, Ian.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay?
I can, yeah.
Hi. My question's about
about trees, is it?
I like trees. They're nice. My question's about resistance. I sometimes find it really puzzling why you would keep resisting the kind of the good stuff. and the nice feelings and all that kind of stuff. Why would I keep? Because I just had like I've had about a day of like, I guess, moments of clarity about certain things, I guess. And I realized I've been resisting the kind of the silence, for example, and how that feels when the silence is there and you feel wonderful and peaceful and go. And I just kind of realized again, oh my God, I've been resisting it again. Why am I? I just get puzzled. Why would you actually resist what you're looking for?
Yeah.
So that's my question in a nutshell.
Why do you think?
I think one of the reasons may be in some strange way it's more comfortable to stay where you are.
Yeah. Why would it be? You're right on the nose there, but why would it be more comfortable to stay where you are?
Because it's something you know, and you've kind of grown used to. Like, well, going that glove analogy, you put a glove on and you think it's nice and comfortable, don't you? And you've worn it in a bit, and kind of, if you see what I mean. So when you take the glove off and maybe have a glimpse of what you really are, it's like, oh, quick, better put the glove back on. It's a bit scary.
Exposed now. I feel a bit,
Yeah.
It's got to be some kind of unworthiness probably within ourselves deep down, that I don't really believe that I can feel peace, love, and joy all the time. Actually, I say I do, but really deep down in my core, something is saying, in the core of the ego at least, something is saying, yeah, but I can't really have everything I want. It's not how life is, or it's not how I am, or I'm not like those awakened beings that have exemplified this, that there's no way I could have that, or some kind of I'm obviously exaggerating it, but there's something rejecting the good stuff because if let's put it in kind of, if I stood out in the middle of the street and asked 10 beings just walking past me at random, do you believe it's possible to feel peace, love, and joy all the time? What do you think they would say? They'd be quite
Yeah, no chance. I would have thought most people would say that.
So there's just kind of some kind of residue inside there, isn't it, of that feeling somewhere. I was quite astonished on my awakening to see I was more scared of peace, love, and joy than I was scared of fear, actually.
Yeah.
It was if I start to feel this stuff, I really have to admit that I might actually be good enough. If I start to feel this stuff more often, and even then constantly, and then even then effortlessly,
yeah,
I might have to really look at this sense that I don't deserve, that the natural state is the natural state, meaning a deep and profound seeing and embodiment of what I've seen is going to lead to those things after I've really looked at what I need to look at. And that's the same process for each one of us. It's not that those who have done it have done something superhuman. They've just done that process completely, and any human being that goes through it will get the same results. It really rubs up against but I've got to strive hard. Nothing comes effortlessly. Not, all of those beliefs that we have.
Yeah. You said to me a few years ago, we'd been meditating. I'd been coming to your meditation classes and been having some quite kind of vivid experiences and dreams and things. And you said to me, be careful, you don't go chasing experiences. And then a couple of days after that, I said to her, I just want to know the truth. I might have even got down on my knees and done it and said, I just want to know my truth of what I am. And from that point, the silence and the presence started to kind of be noticed more and more. Sometimes when sometimes when I was meditating, and sometimes when I would just be sitting there or going for a walk or something, you know. But I think there was something all this time, because this is a number of years ago, I've been wanting for the big experience to come along again, and the big brass bands to play, and God's finger to point, come through those clouds again.
And you're enlightenment badge.
Yeah.
I'm enlightened. I'm like.
And last night I kind of realised, perhaps this is my question about pushing it away. Perhaps the silence and the presence that comes is actually what I asked for all them years ago. And I've just been like trying to push it away. Because I think I want the big dreamlike kind of whatever, you know what I mean?
I want this big dreamlike, archetypical, that we see, that we feel is awakening. I want that. But can I ever have that if I'm pushing away what's already here?
Yeah.
Because I don't feel, for whatever reason, I'm pushing it away anyway. Can I ever really have that if I won't even look at what's actually right here, right now? If I'm, and it's a very clever thing that ego does, right? When I feel this way, then I'll be awakened. But I'm obviously not awakened because I don't feel this way.
Yeah.
And then it concludes it's not good enough because it's not feeling awakened. But because it's trying so hard to get somewhere, it's not looking. I'm saying it because it's a kind of energy ego, isn't it? It's a kind of, don't want to see that, want to go over here. But what if what's right here is something very different to what we really thought? That's how our egoic perspective is with things.
Yeah. And I know in the past I've had kind of moments like this and then just not really realized the significance, and I've just kind of got on with my life kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's something that wants to kind of realize that I don't want to do that this time. And it seems funny that I've just been trying to push it away. It seems really bizarre.
It can only be this whole mechanism, can it? This mechanism that it's not here right now. It must be. There must be more work to do for it. I must need to strive a bit more. I can't really actually accept on some level that I'm good enough right now to experience awakening.
Yeah.
And a lot of beings will be able to feel this inside as they're listening, like, on some level I really want it, and on another level I'm really pushing it away.
Yeah.
And I'm using the absence of peace, love, and joy as the reason for not feeling awakened. But I can't really feel those things until I really stop pushing away. It's an endless cycle like that, isn't it? Endless.
Yeah. I can see I've had this conversation with you probably many times before. Slightly again, repeat, yeah.
But it's good conversation to have, isn't it? It's a very good conversation to be more aware of where we're sabotaging ourselves without realizing, and to want to see that, and to want, this is exactly what I started off saying, I want to see this actually. Why is this going on? Not mind's way of why is this happening, it's why is this going on actually, why is this going on? Let me see, let me look, see if I can pull it apart a little bit, examine it. And
so yeah, thank you. That's I still don't quite understand why you actually push it away. It just seems absolutely nuts.
It's just so very normal for human
Yeah.
beings to feel that it's normal to suffer and be in pain our entire existence.
Mm.
Because that's what we've been experiencing. That's what we've been led to believe is the only possibility. Even when we see an example of awakened being, somehow we're saying, yes, but that can't happen for me. You know, I did it myself. I was sure it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just very, very normal, isn't it, to be feeling and experiencing as a separate being. But that doesn't mean it's ever been true.
Mm. Yeah.
Lovely.
Lovely. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm probably going to horribly mispronounce your name. Osden? Sorry. I probably murdered it. Please could you tell me how to pronounce it properly?
Özden.
Özden. Lovely. Beautiful. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And thank you. Your satsangs available for us also. And actually, my question is very similar with Ian's question. I have resistance, and also I am meditating long time, and I feel very peaceful, beautiful moments, and formless awareness, beautiful things, and but in my daily life sometimes I saw some pattern comes up again and again, and I feel frustrated. Sorry for my English.
Your English is brilliant. Don't worry about that. It's
I feel frustrated, and I try to hear your you are saying a helpful thoughts. Where is that helpful thoughts? I am trying to hear something,
Yeah.
and I am trying to solve these all these patterns, and especially with a creativeness and my awakeness related, I feel like when I try to create something new, and I feel step back, and same with my awareness process.
Mhm.
And also you are saying your before satsang you said something, you don't have to do anything, just you are already dead. Sometimes I feel, yes, I am already dead. I don't need to do anything.
Mhm.
I am formless awareness, peaceful silence. But I cannot stand there. Also, I can observe who is trying to stand there. This is also not me. How can I get beyond this? I feel I am not good enough. Belief there. I feel some fear. I feel some maybe unworthiness things. What can be help me? Thank you.
Very good question. If you can see that you've already recognized what you are, you said that you recognize that formless awareness, that silence is what you are. Right? You've seen that to a great extent. I can see that in you, that you've recognized it clearly. Okay, and part of that process then is for these patterns to come up. Okay, when you recognize what you are, When you see it, you feel it, you're meditating and you, oh, this is so nice, you know, and everything feels wonderful. And then there's going to be a desire that arises from that to stay like that, to live like that. And we all have that desire. So when these patterns arise, either during meditation or when you're going about the rest of your day, they are arising to help you live like this. Okay. So I want you to let go of this idea of staying as the awareness. Stop trying to stay as the awareness now, because it's actually that thing that's disturbing you now. Okay. If you are this formless awareness, do you need to stay as it? Do you really need to stay as it if you are it? And let's just for a moment, while we're looking at this question, let's just, you know, our mind is going to say, yes, but I don't feel like the awareness. Sometimes I feel very much opposite. Okay, so just putting that aside for a moment and just really staying with the basic truth. If I am this, do I need to stay as it? Just feel that question out inside. Is there anything I can do at all to stay as the awareness if I am it? How does that make you feel when you take that question inside? How does your body feel when you?
My body feels relaxed, and my mind, body feels relaxed immediately.
And let me ask you something else. Is that formless awareness any different at all, whether it's watching bliss or whether it's watching frustration? Is it changed? What it's seeing, what it's watching is changing, bliss or frustration or fear or whatever it is, unworthiness. But is it changed? So when this frustration arises or these patterns arise, what I want you to start to do is just to gently let them be, let them arise as much as you can, right? And in that moment, something comes up and then you can say, okay, that's fine. And just look for that part of you that isn't changing in that moment. What we tend to do is push that away, but we feel disturbed then. You know, we feel disturbed if we're pushing. So instead of trying to stay as the awareness, we can begin to recognize it's still here. It might seem more in the background a little bit if there's a big noisy emotion happening in front of me, you know. It's a good time then to remind yourself, there's nothing I can do to lose this. I can't lose this if I am this. What if this one idea is disturbing you, one thought, that I can lose it? It's gone. What if that's not true? And what if that one thought believed is causing all of this suffering? If you kind of get a feel where I'm going, just a different way of looking at it, a different way of dealing with it when it arises. Can you still hear me, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
good.
can hear.
I think I lost you for a moment there. So I want you to really spend some time looking at this question. Can I really stay as this? And can I really lose this if I am it? It's kind of like stepping backwards almost into being the awareness, the formlessness.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Any effort at all to stay or to keep it is gonna disturb you because you are it.
Understand.
It's a subtle thing, isn't it? But it's so powerful when you really grasp it. Your body will tell you when you can I really lose this? Your body will tell you the answer. You'll feel it.
Okay.
And when these things arise, these big emotions, you just say, It's okay. Let it happen. I want to see what it is. I want to look at it, but it's not changed me. I am still that. How I feel is different. How the body feels is different, but I'm not different. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Let me know how you get on with that.
Can you talk about a little bit about creativeness, to create something new? How you create something new?
What kind of creating something new? Sort of like, you mean like in a creative, artistic way or something? Or...
create something, for example, sharing website.
Okay. If I wanted to create something new, the best thing to do is to not have to have a rough idea of what you want to create, you know, a very loose idea, and then to totally let go of how it's going to come into manifestation, as if just to it's your nature to create things, isn't it? You're always creating thoughts and emotions, and experiences are always arising out of this formless awareness that you are. And then the best things that you create are those that you don't really know much about that process. You just watch it happen. So it can be the same with this process. Naturally, when we're just kind of watching from the formless awareness, we'll feel quite inspired. We'll feel quite open. And if you feel you have an idea of what you want to create and you feel a little bit excited about it, that's always a good sign that you're not got too many set ideas, and it'll just kind of come forth as inspiration inside. If you're thinking about what you want to create and you feel frustrated or blocked, it's probably because there's a real idea of how it should happen. And it's much more fun to just kind of give birth to this idea and watch it manifest. You know, you get an idea to go somewhere or to talk to someone or to do something, and it'll just begin to unfold in a quite a fun way. Yeah, does that help?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Very good, lovely. Okay, so last but not least is Jay.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, mine's just a short one pertaining to the satsang today. Thank you for that. If what we are is infinite, then isn't what we are not infinite also?
Yes, ultimately, yes. The final resting place for our seeing is that reality and illusion, what I am not, are the same one. They're made of the same thing. Or perhaps it helps to say, it can be clear to me that I can experience myself as a separate, limited being. But even after I'd seen that was not true, eventually I had to kind of, or I can experience myself as infinite and unlimited. And that both of those are the same being, the same infinite being, experiencing itself this way or that way. But they're not really different. It's just how I think and feel about myself, what ideas I have about myself. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, I just wanted confirmation, because otherwise it seemed like an endless array of what I am not.
Yeah, and it can be kind of, but even what I am not is arising out of this seeing, isn't everything's arising out of the seeing, and reality is real enough to be able to encompass even illusion in the end, where there isn't really any distinction between, in the end, between real and unreal. Even that distinction falls away. It's just I can experience myself as a limited being or I can experience myself as what I really am, you know, a separate being or not separate. But they're both, it's much more fun to experience myself this way, but as the other way, it's not wrong. It's just how I used to think and feel about myself. You know, so even to say what I am not is not ultimately true, is it? I think that's what you're pointing to. Ultimately, even that isn't.
Yes.
You know, I can experience myself an infinite number of ways as the infinite being, and one of those is as being this separate being that we've all been convinced we are.
Yes. Thank you.
Very good question. Lovely. Thank you. Okay, we will leave it there for today. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Namaste.